a motion to send then substitute bill 52-31 COR to the third reading file. Unless anyone would like to speak. Speaker Pangelinan, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, Sidusmasi, for giving me an opportunity. Madam Speaker, I contemplated whether or not to even participate in the discussion and just quietly cast my vote on this matter. And it's very hard for me to do that, as many of you know, that I always try to express so that the public understands what I base my decision on and the thinking process that goes through my mind. And I got many advice on this matter, says they're not interested in that. The general public is not interested in why you decide one way or the other. They just want to know what you decided and cast your vote, duck your head, go out there, hide, and hope you survive the election. And Madam Speaker, I don't think that I could go home and do that. I don't think that I could run home and hide. I don't think that I want to do that because I have never done that in the past. I wasn't like somebody, Madam Speaker, that I know that while they were running for an election, when this body was going to vote on a bill that would have provided $100 million in tax refunds and $100 million to pay our COLA recipients, that there were members of the community that were, it wasn't popular back then to even talk about borrowing money to pay for tax refunds, Madam Speaker. Believe it or not, today it's the most popular thing. How do we borrow money to pay tax refunds? And we all fall all over ourselves to try and find how we can borrow money. Never mind how we can pay it back. All we're interested in is how we can borrow money. And back then, Madam Speaker, when the discussion was, should we borrow money for the landfill, and that's all? Or should we also include borrowing money for the refunds and the COLA? Members of this body were telling me, because I was proposing, that we can't leave our people behind. That we owe our people these refunds, we owe the COLA recipients this moral promise that we've made. People weren't even interested in the legal promise anymore. It was the moral duty that we had to fulfill our obligations to our manamko. And of course, that was the discussion. And members of this body were saying, no, we can't because we're under consent decree. And if you borrow money for the COLA and the refunds, we won't be able to sell the bonds for the landfill, and the landfill's the priority. Never mind the people, the landfill, the landfill, the landfill. And we had people in this body, Madam Speaker, who would not face their responsibility and their duty to come into this body and cast a vote on that. Why? Because they were running for election. Their position was, I can't afford to piss people off because I'm running for election. And they were running for governor, Madam Speaker. So when it was them, Madam Speaker, they would not come in here and fulfill their duty. Today, they're calling us to come in and fulfill our duty. And we're here to fulfill our duty. But it's so ironic that when it was them, they turned and would not come in here and face their responsibility. But now, because they're not running for election, they think we should address this matter. And so that's why I've decided I'm going to address the matter, Madam Speaker. You know, Madam Speaker, it's very, very difficult to try and take this discussion and take it outside of ourselves, so to speak, Madam Speaker. To take it outside of what defines us as a person, number one, what defines us as a member of a community of faith, number two, and our responsibility to ourselves as a person, to our community as a faith, but then we add the additional responsibility that we have in this body to make the decision not solely based on those criteria, but the other criteria that we have professed, we have promised, we have sworn to consider when we make our decisions in this body. And that is the community of the entire island of Guam, with all its diversities, with all its differences in beliefs, in faiths, in thoughts, in ideas, in opinions. And that it is our responsibility as public officials in this realm here today on this floor to base our decisions based on that as well. Because I'm not saying that we separate ourselves from those two other criteria, because we can't. It's part of what defines us. But even at that, Madam Speaker, we have that responsibility. If this was a question in church, very simple. The answer that I would give as a person of that community and that faith, it's very simple. My response, no. Of course not. Of course we don't want to see abortions. If it was just myself, in my own home, or in my outdoor garage with my family, it was a very simple question as well for me. No, I don't. I don't want it for my family. I don't want it for my community of faith. But that's not where it ends, unfortunately, Madam Speaker. And we all have to face ourselves and try to carry that responsibility for this more diverse community that we have sworn to consider their rights in making the decisions that will affect all of us. Not just my community of faith, not just my family, not just myself as an individual. And do I feel that I am duty-bound to inject myself into those families and those communities of faith other than mine? That I should impose my own will on them? It's very, very hard, Madam Speaker, to know when you should do that, if you should do that. Is it right to do that? And we have these things that guide us when we make the decisions based upon our greater community, Madam Speaker. And those are the laws that govern this land and how they guide us in terms of giving us guidance, direction, fiat of when we can inject ourselves in those situations, Madam Speaker. And so, Madam Speaker, as I look at this bill, can what this bill seeks to accomplish be accomplished without this law? Yes. It can. Should it be? Yes, it should. Should it be a matter of dicta coming out of this body to inject ourselves in those communities and those families? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think so, Madam Speaker. But it doesn't mean I don't support this. I just don't support it in this fashion, in this element, when I have to look at the greater community that I have sworn to consider and to live in and to guide and to exercise authority and power over the laws that will govern their lives. And should this law, this personal, for my own, this personal acceptance that this is not correct, that what we're trying to do should be happening in families everywhere? Yes. But should it be happening where this is not the decision of those families or the individual themselves? Should I force them? I don't believe so, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this is not the first time we've argued this issue and presented ourselves with decisions as difficult as this coming out of this legislative floor, Madam Speaker. And I tell the story of the first time that I was faced with this. And who better to turn to than the one most affected by it, the woman, Madam Speaker. And I spent many, many nights with my mother, Madam Speaker, and thank God she was still alive back then. many nights going back and forth of what I have a right, now I had that right to tell her what to do in the situations like this. Whether or not I had that right. I wasn't her son anymore. I wasn't her Catholic son raised in all the Catholic schools, going to the Catholic universities anymore. I was a government official who had the power to tell her what to do and how to do it. And I tell you, her response was, I know what to do. Let me do it. Let me take responsibility for what I need to do between myself, my situation, my God. Let me take that responsibility. Don't impose that responsibility on me just because you have a power and other people want you to impose that responsibility on me. Think about me and my right. Think about who's going to suffer everything. If I want to go to the church to talk this over, I will. I'm going to make sure I talk it over with the doctor. I'm going to make sure I may even talk about it with you, son. But don't tell me I have to, and don't tell me I must, and don't tell me I shall. Leave that responsibility to me. I carry that burden because I was born a woman, and I want you to understand that. I know it's hard, and I know you think you're doing the right thing. And I will seek guidance wherever I can and however I feel I need. And yes, I truly appreciate everything else that goes on in all of the many, many people with a good heart to want to prevent these things. And I support them. But in the end, it's something that is happening to me and me alone. And Madam Speaker, I don't have her anymore. I don't have her anymore to tell me. I only have her memory. I only have her desire and her prayers to continue to guide me. I only have her knowing that I am not evil, that I wish no malice on anyone, and that I do the best I can. And if somebody wants to demonize me for doing that, let them. Because I know she never will. She loves me and trusts me. And I will forever try and live up to that love and trust. It really is unfortunate, Madam Speaker. I could turn to anger about the politics that the governor has taken on this thing. Because I could see him out there smiling. Because he thinks he's cornered everyone. But I will continue to do what I think is right. To struggle and live with the decisions I make. And to pray that if they are wrong, that on that judgment day, I will be judged by no one else but God, and I will accept his judgment. Thank you, and Sidus Masi, Madam Speaker.